This episode of Heroes of the Horn is brought to you by our Taviran, Lady Stephanie. I could almost feel the pattern swirl just listening to you tell your tale, and I have no talent there. You are Taviran, all right. You and maybe your friends, too.
Welcome to Heroes of the Horn, a Wheel of Time podcast. I am Sir Matt.
And I am Sir Ezra. Welcome to our Wheel of Time book club. The horn has sounded, and we have answered the call. Today we are covering The Eye of the World chapters 35 through 44.
Woo! And what a segment of chapters this is, man. You know, it seems like as we've been going, it's like, oh, okay, you know, I think was it last week we're like, okay, not really a lot happens. It's a little more subdued, and this time it's like, everything happens. It's like I was even in going back and getting ready for today's episode. I'm like, oh my god, this starts out and we get to Caemlyn, which in itself is a huge deal. But where by the time we get to the end of this segment of chapters, it's like that seems so far removed. It's like, man, just the way that the way that the pattern has been woven for today's episode, right? The way the wheel turns.
That's right. Yeah, well, and I was thinking, I mean, as we keep going, it's going to get thicker and thicker, and so there may be a time where we have to go an extra month or do an additional 2 parts or something for a book. But I'm kind of pushing us along here at about 3 months pace to get through one book. So could be 4, which I think might be okay as well. But it's different. I mean, we're trying this. It's a different way. We're marching through. Sir Matt experiencing it for the first time. I have read it several times, and we're doing this in preparation for the TV show that's coming out. It's a series we've always wanted to cover. We've talked about for years. I actually remember being out in Portland and us talking a little bit before I came out there about this series, and then you were in your D&D club, and those guys kind of knew about it, and so it's just cool. It's great to be doing this. And you're right though. This is a big set of chapters. And I remember when I divided this, I kind of thought, well, this is just all Caemlyn. So here we go. We got Caemlyn. We have people who are going to. We have a rescue that takes place, and then those folks get to Caemlyn. But it's awesome. It's going to be epic, and we're gonna get right to it. But first, before that, a hero's welcome. How you doing, my friend?
Oh man, I am good. Just staying indoors, hunkering down, not going anywhere. They got that coronavirus up there in the state of Washington. Yeah, the coronavirus on the opposite side of Portland. So trust me, it is the talk of everything in the world, it seems right now. So
yeah, stay safe. I mean, really. Wash your hands, use the sanitizer, all that good stuff.
Avoid corona. I mean, that seems like the easiest place to get it. I don't drink it, so I don't have to worry about it.
Right. Yeah, I know. It sucks. I don't really know. I mean, I keep hearing about it, and hopefully everybody out there is staying safe and doing well. But it's great because it's right near you, and I know we were just talking about it before we started.
I'm not. I'm not. All the studies show that the flu is 10 times worse. So
yeah, well, you'll be fine. I mean,
I know. I'm just messing around with it. I saw some pretty funny videos on TikTok of people in the subway in New York. I think I sent you that one.
Oh my lord! Yeah,
got
causing a panic.
These guys are wearing like hazmat suits, and they've got like it's like I don't know, some kind of container or something, and it's just full of like soapy water, and they like spill it out, and everyone's like freaking out.
Right, jumps up on the bench. Oh god!
Oh my god! It's not like it's.
I guarantee those guys got an earful. Like, jeez.
Oh man, just so ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Yeah. Over here things haven't been. I haven't heard much about it. It's been pretty calm here in Ohio for the most, far as I know. I mean, maybe I'm also just super sheltered and I don't really know, but Yeah, it's been cold though, and I think we're finally getting to a point where this week it's going to be nice and getting a little bit warmer and stuff. I actually have a big pickle. I was going to talk about this. We have a Game of Thrones con that's coming up in April, and the week before that is Jordan Con, and I'm just sort of like, do I go to both?
That's a lot.
It is a lot, but part of me thinks it's time. Like, there's some pretty cool guests that are going to be there. So anyone who's interested in going to Jordan Con, definitely should look into it, because I think it's gonna be a lot of fun this year. I think it's exciting because the show is going on. This is like that first year where they might reveal something cool. Something might happen, like some photos or something.
There's been some photos of the set. Just like kind of an aerial shot and stuff like that. Yeah. Where is Jordan Con?
It's in Atlanta.
Oh, that's not too bad. That's not too bad of a flight from Ohio.
Yeah, no. I think it'd be fine. I have a place to stay with my cousins, so. But it's just sort of like it's back-to-back weekends. But you know what? I need to suck it up.
Hey, you should. I mean, I unfortunately am doing something the weekend before that weekend. But I'm gonna go. I just bought XFL tickets.
Nice.
For they're like $10.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, hey, since we are mentioning the cons, though, I thought we would let folks here know that, we're heading to, it'll be Mount Sterling. It's Ice and Fire Con. We've kind of confirmed on our other podcast, Bend the Knee, that we will be heading there. So if you guys, it's a small, intimate, nerdy kind of con. If you guys are interested in going, if you like Game of Thrones, you should go check it out. If you want to talk Wheel of Time when we're there too, that's fine.
Absolutely.
We do all the above. So
absolutely.
Be cool to see people out.
All right, man. Well, as today, I think we kind of just got to jump right into it because there's just a lot to cover.
Yeah. There really is. So we're going to kind of speed through some stuff here. We've got comments from last week. We got a poll, and then after that, we got to get right into these chapters. And you want to talk about how it's going to be a little bit different while I pull up these comments?
So normally we've kind of broken into 3 segments. We talked a little about world building, what are the places we're going to, but today we're just actually going to go through kind of briefly, kind of maybe hit a point or two, almost like a bullet point from each of the chapters. So it's going to definitely be a little bit different. And then we've got definitely some comments over there from our Patreon page. The interesting thing is, in getting ready for today's episode, I always start with sort of a, like on Reddit, how like you have too long didn't read.
Yeah.
And it's always like I give as what I kind of think about it. And so today he thought I should actually include that. And so basically I was like, well, he's like, so like, where have we been? I'm like, well, I said, we arrive in Caemlyn. Perrin and Egwene are rescued. Matt and Rand meet Loyal, who's a freaking Ogier. Elias was a warder. Lan and Moraine see what's going on with Perrin's eyes. The band gets back together in Caemlyn. Rand sees Logain. We meet Morgaze. Moraine helps Matt, who should have never touched that dagger. She says she can't even remove it from him until they get to Tarval and like kind of the effects of it. And then we go into the darkness. So there's sort of the too long didn't read version of what we're going to be covering today. But I just thought that was pretty funny. I thought we'd include that.
Yeah, it's great because every time we do get on here, I mean, Matt will kind of say, so this happened and then this happened. It's real informal, just sort of like, and then next this happened. I'm like, dude, we need to just actually write that down because I wish people could hear you, articulate in 30 seconds what happened across 8 chapters. And it's a lot to do, but.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
It's funny. It's kind of funny. So,
absolutely.
And actually a tie-in to this as we get going, I'm going to have, in just a minute, I'm going to have Sir Matt read sort of our each chapter, just a quick little, 1 to 2 sentence summary. But before we do that, we had a poll last time. Can you trust a skinny innkeeper? Why so skinny? And overwhelmingly, the results are as I thought they would be. We had a bunch of no's. It was literally all no. And there was no one who said yes. And I thought it was great. Amanda wanted to make sure that we kept this. That no one should be trusting a skinny innkeeper. It doesn't make sense. And actually, in this chapter, I think our first chapter. Rand kind of points out that he does trust our innkeeper because he's not so skinny. All right, very very trustworthy. I thought something funny.
sees a plump innkeeper, and he feels reassured.
Yeah. Thank God. So Lady Heather, though, mentioned that she thought that maybe somewhere, this is kind of funny, somewhere along the line that Robert Jordan must have had a bad experience with a skinny host or like a skinny,
it's possible.
innkeeper. And maybe wrote that in there. I don't know. Or it's a commentary on food or something. But yeah, so that was just kind of fun. And yeah, it's important to keep track of some of these little things like that he weaves into these stories. And so when we go into an inn, what I actually think that's sort of the cool part to this is that he always mentions, in book 2, he's going to mention like all the different inns inside of a certain city and which one do we stop at? Where, do we stop here? Do we keep moving? And it just does all that world building for us. We know there's 5 to 6 inns here in this town, and then there's this person. So it's just really cool to kind of see that he had sort of a fascination, with that aspect of a town or a city, and then had some commentary on whether being skinny or plump made you a good innkeeper. So, all right, let me see here. So before we hop into those summaries, just some recap from last week from some of our patrons. So Osham and Craig Wallace, we were kind of talking about, this was in the extended edition. We were talking about Arthur Hawkwing, and we actually brought on Sir Nick, Sir Matt's brother, who's read the series multiple times and like me, has read the first book numerous times. Nick's read the first book way more than I have, actually, and because it's such a good book. The first 3 I think are fantastic, and those are the ones I love to go back and reread. So we brought him on, and everyone kind of really enjoyed that. Again, Craig just sort of said that he loved the extended edition. Great to hear Nick. And his thoughts, he thought that his name suggestion was brilliant. So if you had a little, let's just say this about Sir Nick, you got to watch out for that guy. We plan on doing some spoiler stuff with him, but I'm nervous about it, Sir Matt, because I'm not so sure you can be there. I'm sort of like,
that's okay. That's okay. Yeah. I'm totally fine with the
spoiler, edition going forward.
Yeah, because I think there's a lot of people on Patreon who want to talk spoilers, because that's the whole deal with this podcast, is that it is my first read, and I think it's a lot of people's first read. So we're only going to talk to up on the main show what I've read to, which is where we're at. And so I think we've gotten a couple people who've commented on the Patreon and sent us some messages being like, you guys don't know what you're talking about. Like, it's like, well, I think Sir Ezra does know what he's talking about. He's just not specifically saying something because he doesn't want to spoil anything.
To spoil it, yeah. I oftentimes I'll pose a question, and I think people think I really, well,
you don't know.
I do kind of,
right?
I do, again, I was telling you earlier, the nice part about having Sir Nick and Lady Heather and some of these other people is that they have read the series as much, and there are so many characters. There's so many. I mean, your brother Jeremy has read the series. Like, he knows, like, it's so vast, and it's actually hard not to bounce ahead and say, we actually, in that extended edition, we mentioned a certain word, and I'm not going to say it again. We mentioned one word, and it caused, I think, Lady Amanda to go look it up and say, what is that? And she's like, oh boy, I shouldn't have looked that up. And we just, like, offhandedly were talking about the histories, and we were talking about someone, who had gone through a certain experience and accidentally maybe, brought up a terminology that had to do with the one power that had not been introduced yet. And so it's like, whoa, we got to really be careful about that. So just keep that in mind, I guess, as we go through. It's sort of the fun of it. And Lady Heather often says, on Patreon, I'll say this to make it very clear, you guys can post spoiler stuff on there, comment why, like, even in the discussion thread. I know that some of the people who comment on the discussion thread, this is their first read through, maybe even like Lady Amanda, and they might come across some of those spoiler elements in the comments. But it is a place where we are allowing people to just make any comment they want on the chapter or on the thread, and then here on the show, I have to kind of pick and weed through those and see which ones we're going to read, which ones are non-spoiler. So if you mark it spoiler, that would be very helpful. If you just kind of said this comment, because we got people writing several paragraphs worth of stuff on there. It's fantastic, and I've read some of it, to you, the non-spoiler stuff, and the stuff that makes the show is stuff that I think is relevant to last week's episode, or 2 weeks ago, that episode, that batch of chapters. and then even connects to sort of where we are now, what we're going forward with in this chapter. So just kind of keep that in mind. I've had to read a lot more of those just to kind of, because I want to go back and forth. Lady Heather and Craig and some of these other guys, I want to go back and forth with them on what they think. And that's why after the first or second book, or maybe midway through the second book, I think Sir Nick and I, and just I have a few other people who have talked about wanting to get on the podcast or get on that Patreon feed and do a spoiler series, which would be kind of neat. And then we can kind of move those comments there. But just keep that in mind, I guess, as we go through this. So we got into a conversation last time about collecting the different hardback versions, and Sir James was on here, and he was talking about that he has been also chasing down those hardback versions of Wheel of Time. It's been fun discovering all of these used bookstores in my area, and that is the fun, I think, is going to a thrift bookstore and finding some of like to find at half price books. You can go in there and for $7-10 you can find a nice hardback version of the old Wheel of Time stuff. That's $40 new. I mean, 40 or 45. So if you can find those, I say get your hands on them, because I got my collection just because I knew they were going to do reprints and we were going to lose some of that artwork and get a different version out there. So this has been kind of fun. Craig sort of said the same thing. He's short on the Eye of the World. He's guessing that he handed it to a friend, lost track of it, but he is considering getting the audio book for in between podcast episodes. Amanda, let's see, I used to see them at Goodwill stores all the time. I'd love to have these in hardcover, but I barely have enough room for all my paperbacks. And actually, I saw a picture of her shelf the other day.
Yeah, it's getting
on social media. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Let's see, a couple of things here. Just a thought that if anybody wants to make a list of the hardcovers they're looking for, I'd be happy to keep an eye out for them, so people kind of, maybe if you're looking for something, and maybe what was hard to find was a hardback edition of the Eye of the World, like an original, or even just like a second printing or whatever, like that. I had to order it new. I mean, I could not find one that I could just get cheap. So if anybody has one of those and you want to kind of share, or you want to sell and trade or whatever, feel free to do that. Lady Heather, so just saying that she has a mixture of the paperback and hardcover, as well as all of them on Kindle. The only thing I don't have is the audiobooks, plus I always keep at least 2 copies of The Eye of the World in case I meet someone in the wild that has never read them before. I have given away 3 or 4 copies just this year. Let's go. That's awesome. I love it. So, okay, now with that, let's get into, there were a lot of comments. So if people will remember, this is sort of the issue that I'm in. I think it is sort of somewhat obvious as that something happened in the last batch of chapters with Rand and Matt. We talked about the confusing timeline. There are theories on it. Why did Robert Jordan write those string of chapters that way? And it could have something to do with, I'll just read what Lady Heather has here, because I think there's no spoilers in it. And that's sort of the thing is, some people know. Some people have read the series, and they can kind of tell you, well, this exactly happened, and this is why Robert Jordan did what he did there. And I chose not to say or suggest anything to give any spoilers last week, just to even Sir Matt and those of you who I want you guys to try to figure out, what happened with Rand and Matt during their escape from Goad and things. Like it was an intense moment, and then speculate as to why these chapters are super kind of confusing, and why there's that repetition that we talked about with the giving of the scarves, and I can't, whoever they were traveling with, just could not, can't help them. This is the only help I can provide, and outside of that, guys, I got to kind of keep out of this. It's said multiple times, but here we go. Lady Heather said this. I have a theory about the Rand chapters and why the timeline is so confusing. I have heard people say that they think that Robert Jordan was playing with a different writing style and it flopped. But I tend to believe that everything that Robert Jordan did was for a purpose. I believe he was trying to get the reader to feel the confusion that Rand is feeling during this time. Rand and Matt are stressed to the max, hungry and sleep deprived. On top of that, Rand gets sick after Four Kings. It states in the book that Rand felt that time was all askew. It's not that time was actually wonky. Rand just remembers it in bits and pieces, and I think Robert Jordan was trying to convey that to the audience. So again, and then there's a follow-up comment. Witherbucket, shout out to you. Glad to have you. And a really good comment. I think hits the nail on the head there as to what was happening with Rand and Matt. But I'm gonna maybe shy away from reading that. But again, great conversation going on there, and I love it. I mean, it's super. It's good. It's really good. So if any of you are interested or if you're okay with hearing, no one's going right out and spoiling anything crazy. They're just talking about the chapter. And so I feel like it's still very safe to go in there and discuss the chapter and make connections. And it just sort of depends on what you want out of the reading experience. If you're okay with a few spoilers, and that's fine. Some people don't want, even the suggestions that I make or like, oh, pay attention to this. Some people might think that is
right.
a little too much.
We were talking about that because, you just run into that situation where if you tell somebody, oh, pay close attention to this, then that may ruin their experience of hitting it for the first time. Like, wow, oh man, I didn't see that coming. Because then they're waiting around, they're expecting it. And so we just try to just avoid,
we're trying to thread that needle. Yeah, and we'll figure it out. We'll get it. But if something like that does happen, just know it's not intentional, and we're not trying to. Because you've got my buddy Matt here, so I want to see how he experiences these chapters and what his thoughts are, and I think that's the fun of it. But okay, enough of that. Let's get into this. Okay, lots of stuff.
Okay, so this week we're into chapters 35 through 44. Again, I'm just going to read a very brief summary on these, and then we're going to dive into not really necessarily all the chapters, but some of them a little bit deeper. So chapter 35, Rand and Matt make their way to the Queen's Blessing. We finally hit Caemlyn. 36 in Queen's Blessing, Basail Gil tells Rand and Matt more about their current situation. Rand meets Loyal, which is going to be a huge deal. 37, Moraine and Lan rescue Egwene and Perrin. 38, Lan frees Perrin and Egwene. Those chapters go like hand in hand with each other. 39, Rand goes out to see Logain but falls into a garden. Chapter 40, Rand falls into the palace gardens and is taken under Elaine's protection. Eladia has a foretelling that the world marches to turmoil and that Rand is at the heart of it. 41, Moraine arrives and tells them that the dagger that Matt has is contaminating him. That's the band gets back together chapter. Chapter 42, several of them tell stories that the Dark One means to blind the eye of the world. Moraine decides to go to the Blight to prevent it. 43, Loyal tells them the ways are dangerous. Moraine insists they use them. The boys dream of Balsamon, who identifies them. And 44, they enter the ways.
Yeah. A lot.
Yeah, there's a lot this week, which is crazy just because it's like, man, we've been pushing so hard for the past, really last month, past couple of weeks, for those of you that have been reading along, to get to Caemlyn. And we finally get to Caemlyn, and it's like, oh, man, it's instead of just catching our breath, we just hit the accelerator. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
We've been pushing so hard to get to Caemlyn, and now we're here, and nope, everything's about to get blown out of the water.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, so what did you, your first sort of, as you're traveling with Rand and Matt, like you walk, like you're going into Caemlyn, they thought Baerlon was huge.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Right here, just in that opening paragraph here. Rand twisted up to kneel behind the driver's seat. He could not help laughing with relief. We made it, Matt. I told you. Words died in his mouth as his eyes fell on Caemlyn. After Baerlon, even more after the ruins of Shadar Logoth, he had thought he knew what a great city would look like. But this was more than he would have believed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's then they start describing it. They start describing it. They're talking about it's huge. It's like way bigger than they could possibly imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I was thinking, just about the show, and I thought about when you come to Caemlyn, what is it going to look like? What's the concept art on it right now? It's out there. I mean, somebody's working on it. And I thought of King's Landing actually in Westeros and Game of Thrones, and I thought, is it going to look like, where are they going to shoot this? What is it going to look like? I hadn't really thought about that until literally just this past weekend here, when we were in these chapters, and I thought, dang, this is going to be interesting because it is like, I mean, it's like Camelot, it is the city. It's the big, it's awesome. Outside of Tarvalon, like it's
right.
It's
or think Gondor in Lord of the Rings, something like that. It's a huge city.
Huge. Right. Yeah. I think so they're looking at like one of the walls, like they say it's like 50 foot high, right? Of pale gray stone streaked with silver and white.
Yeah, they have there's towers everywhere. 1,000 stories had painted cities in his mind, the great cities of kings and queens, of thrones and powers and legends, and Caemlyn fit into those mind-deep pictures as water fits into a jug. So just like the city is just huge, the grandest city in the world, built by Ogier, at least the inner city and palace were. And so it's gonna be huge. And then you have Lady Morghese, who we'll meet here in just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about this chapter is that I think, I guess just me having gone through this a couple times, like I didn't realize, but I wonder, like when we come to Caemlyn, it's not just like the city is big and there's a lot of people. There's a special event taking place, which you heard about last week or, last episode. And we talk about in regards to Logain, the false dragon coming in. Like it's not, so now the city is packed, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's something that Basil Gill will talk about, the innkeeper. He says like the reason there are so many rats in the city is because of all the people, is what he believes. That there's just so when a lot of people get together, that sort of rats will come and everything. So it's just, I think even though it's an immense big city and it would be overwhelming for them anyway, now the streets are packed. People are shoulder to shoulder. You can barely move. I think of it as like going to a new theme park that had just opened, right? And it's sort of like you're just awestruck by it, but then it's almost not that you can't still enjoy it, but it's just like you are shoulder to shoulder, elbow to elbow with all of these people who are pressing in here because of the false dragon.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely. I like this line here too. Gaping at the city and the people, Rand was taken by surprise when the cart turned down a side street, narrower than the boulevard, which is the Caemlyn Road, right? It turns into like a boulevard there, but still twice as wide as any street in Edmund's Field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just immense. You could probably on one of these streets, you could fit all of Edmund's Field, right? Like there, the wine spring. Inn just keeps looking smaller and smaller as they go to these different places. So, but yeah, I mean, so in the first part of this, right, they're kind of, and this will tell you. Here's a tactic that I thought Robert Jordan used that was great. Is as they're looking for the inn, people just start motioning. That's over that way, right? Like it's so far away, I can't even give you specific direction. Just head that way,
right? And
then ask somebody else later on. Then they'll tell you. You'll narrow in on it, and that's sort of how they get to a place called the Queen's Blessing, which they had to think back, like, okay, now that we're in Caemlyn, what the heck do we do?
Right.
Where do we go?
Yeah, we've been running around. We've been almost captured. We've almost died. We've almost been sick. All this stuff, and now, hey, we're here. Yeah, what are we supposed to do again? It's more just a sigh of relief, really, than anything.
Right. And, you and I were talking before this, before we started recording, you were saying, Matt's over there freaking out.
Well, and that was some of that was last time as well. But yeah, Matt's like sick, right? And he's kind of, I don't think we're gonna make it, man. Like, like what do we do?
Yeah. Right. He has he basically has kind of a mini freak out here too because of the number of people. It's like he sees dark friends in every face that passes. I mean, he's just growing more and more paranoid. So yeah, it's pretty intense.
Yeah. It's, we're in Caemlyn, but what do we do? He had There's so many people. It's so loud, right? He said Tyrande was like a being inside a giant beehive, constantly buzzing. And then even if Moraine and Lan and everyone's here, how will we possibly find them? Is kind of like what Matt's saying. Moraine will find us, Rand said slowly. So that's kind of the thing. All we need to do is get there. We're here. And then he and Matt get into a little bit. Matt starts to being like, what if they're dead? What if they don't find us? What do we do? Where do we go? He says, right. What if Moraine doesn't find us? What if nobody does? But he can't even bring himself to happen. Then he said, Matt's, Rand says, if that's the worst that happens, it means seeking out a lady. Is it Eladia? Eladia? Elida. Yeah. Okay. Seeking out Elida, the Aes Sedai in here, right? He would still go into Tar Valon first. He did not know if Matt remembered what Tom had said about the red Aja and the black, but he surely did. His stomach twisted again. Tom said, to find an inn called the Queen's Blessing, we'll go there first. And
yeah.
And he says it's a place to start, right? And because Matt's like, well, we can't even afford anything. That's just where we just got to go. That's where we're going.
Yeah. Let me see here. I like what you just read there, actually, because we'll think about that when it happens. If it happens, the worst meant seeking out Elida, the Aes Sedai in the palace. Yeah, it's mentioned that before this, going into Caemlyn, that the queen has an advisor, has an Aes Sedai advisor, and her name is Elida. And so far, it's like Moraine she's been pretty good to us, so although we're trying to, Tom Maryland keeps telling us to stay away from these Aes Sedai, and he's warning us about this sort of stuff. The worst thing that could if nothing else works out, and we're here and we're just stuck, and we go to the Queen's Blessing, let's say we can't get food, we can't get any support there, whatever, then we'll have to go to the palace. And maybe we'll seek out this Aes Sedai and sort of say, hey, we were with someone else who said they were an Aes Sedai, and this is what's been going down. Yeah. Thank goodness it doesn't come to that necessarily. So well, and you already know, Sir Matt, like they meet her. They but it's not in this attempt of like, we're desperate, we don't know what to do, we're going to go to her. It's sort of the pattern takes us there.
Yeah.
So
Matt's still kind of freaking out, right? He says, I can't, Rand, they're everywhere. He dropped his eyes to the paving stone, wherever we go, they're right behind us, or they're waiting for us. They'll be at the Queen's Blessing too. Nothing's going to stop a fade. But I think it's important to remember, I mean, they've been through a lot, right? And, the Matt kind of apologizes, I'm sorry, Rand. I just can't stop thinking I'll never see home again. I just want to go home. It's a lot, this is a totally new adventure, a new type of thing for all of these guys. And then when you look at what's going on with Perrin and Egwene, which we'll get to, as well, there's a lot going on with them.
Yeah, there really is. And so they've been desperate. They had, you can kind of see, so Matt's freaking out, but then also Rand is very, like, some of that paranoia starts to kind of rub off on him a little bit. He wants to get to the Queen's Blessing as quickly as he can, and along the way there, he starts to think, I've got this heron-marked blade, this sword, that has drawn a lot of attention in smaller towns. Surely it's going to draw attention here. And so it's like he starts to think, okay, how do I cover this up? And this is very interesting in that he sees other people who have their swords kind of wrapped and bound with either white or red, those colors, like these pieces of fabric, these straps that they have, or bound with cord and stuff. So he he sees that, right? Staying unnoticed was something that Rand thought a great deal about. He kept his cloak over his sword, but that would not be good enough for very long. Sooner or later, someone would wonder what he was hiding. People are suspicious. Something else that Robert Jordan is kind of making a comment on here is that people in the city are, what's this guy hiding? Who's this person? Even though there's thousands of people around, this guy, if he looks strange, we're gonna call him out. And then the mob mentality sets in. So let's see. Sooner or later, someone would wonder what he was hiding. He could not take Blunt's advice, the guy that we're traveling with before, to stop wearing it. It was his link to Tam, to his father, right? He's not going to give this sword up. No way. He'll die with it if he has to. But what he can do is try and conceal it. And so he gets to this point where he finds, someone who is selling strips of cloth, and it's interesting that the strip that he gets, he ends up getting the color red, and because it was cheaper. Simply because it was cheaper. And I just think it's kind of funny because Sir Matt, we're going to the Queen's blessing. Clearly they're in favor of the Queen. And so something that's going on here, did you notice sort of the political dynamic or the divide that was going on between people who wore the colors red and white?
Oh, I guess I didn't really pay attention to that. I mean, I guess I was.
Yeah.
I saw it, but I guess it wasn't something that I was thinking deeper into. As we passed over.
So us being having read A Song of Ice and Fire series, when you go back through that, we often talk about how George Martin writes for people who are going to read it a second, a third, and a fourth time. And he, upon an initial read, there are things that you will miss. You're going to miss. And that actually, sometimes I think authors want that. They want you to go back and revisit their story and say, holy cow, look at that. One thing that a nod that was mentioned just a few paragraphs before that was actually that Matt looked to Rand. And Rand then thought, he has an internal thought Matt he's looking to me as to what to do now that we're in the city. So it's just a subtle little, it's only one little line, but I caught that oh yeah, Matt is looking to Rand. Rand is the leader. Here we go. He's going to, decide what to do for us. And so this little bit about the factions or whatever, Rand is trying to pull from what he had learned or he had heard Blunt, say before they went into the city that it was one of the grandest cities of all time. May the light, illumine the Queen. He says this, right? But he doesn't even know who he basically says these things that he's heard before entering the city, and they happen to be all sayings and phrases that support the Queen. And anyone who's wearing white at the time or has a white scarf or that they're an armband that is white, they actually somewhat oppose the Queen and the influence of Aes Sedai in the city. And there's a lot of white cloaks walking around too. They sort of think, same thing that was happening with the Two Rivers. The weather's not good right now. And who are they blaming there? They're blaming the wisdom. Why isn't the wisdom doing anything about this? The crops aren't coming up like they should. It's harsh times. It's bad. Let's point a finger at the wisdom. Well, here on a bigger scale, those who wear white are kind of upset that let's blame the Aes Sedai, or let's blame their influence or the influence of the power as to being a problem here in the city. And there's more to it than that, but that's the simplified version, I guess. And so Rand, the only reason he buys red is because it's cheaper. They don't have much coin, and he's worried that they won't be able to even afford getting into the Queen's blessing. And it's interesting that I think one of the reasons why they're granted access or entry to the Queen's blessing
is because
because he has red, yeah, and because he's heard people say things about may the light illumine Queen Morgaze. So okay, here we go. It just stumbles upon that. Had he have been saying other phrases that were more negative and more focused on the negativity, I don't think he would have been as warmly welcomed by Basil Gill, Master Gill.
Wow.
I think it would have been. So, anyways, it's a weird, just a little thing that you'll kind of keep your eye on as we go through. But the only reason he did it was to hide
his sword.
That heron marked blade.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, right after that is they do get to the Queen's blessing, and they get in because he says, Master Gill, as soon as he meets him, a friend of ours told us to come here, Tom Maryland. He says, I know him. And then he kind of brings him in here. And so they start to say that he's dead, and the innkeeper won't believe it. I'll believe
Right.
he's dead when I see his corpse, right? And they kind of explain a little bit about their story. They kind of leave out. I think this goes into chapter 36 here. He leaves out some of the the Trollocs and the Fades, but he just kind of tells them story. He says, we kept on until we reached Caemlyn, so we're now in chapter 36. That was the plan. Originally Caemlyn, then Tarvalon. He shifted uncomfortably on the edge of his chair after keeping everything secret for so long. It felt odd to be telling somebody even as much as he was. If we stay on that route, the others will be able to find us sooner or later, if they're alive, Matt murmured. Rand did not even glance at Matt. And he also feels like he's compelled to add, it could bring you trouble helping us. And then Master Gil, who immediately just becomes kind of a cool character. I just kind of like him here. Can't say as I want trouble, but it wouldn't be the first I've seen. No bloody dark friend will make me turn my back on Tom's friends. This friend of yours from the north now, if she comes to Caemlyn, I'll hear. There are people keep their eyes on comings and goings like that around here, and the word spreads.
Yeah, he's not having any of it. He's not going to put up with it. I like him a lot, actually. He's a good guy. And yeah, interesting. Well, and then here's another time where Matt is getting frustrated. Let's see. They're talking about Aes Sedai and getting help and stuff. He says that he's a good Queen's man, but there are too many in Caemlyn right now who take it wrong. And I don't mean just the White Cloaks. Matt snorted. For all I care, the Ravens can take every Aes Sedai straight to Sheol Gul. And he snaps back and watch your tongue, right?
Yeah.
I don't love him, but I didn't say I'm a fool.
Yeah.
I'm not a fool. And sort of that's the thing, is that people are looking to blame someone here. And so you blame those maybe in power, or you blame someone who uses a power that you don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
And you think they should have more control over these things, and they don't. But Master Gil is not that fool. He's going to continue to support the Queen there at the Queen's blessing. So
yeah, and just like you said, so then this is where I'd say kind of the biggest. We get a new character introduced where things get really huge change, right? I mean, this is where I think the whole. I mean, everything we've seen so far kind of changes. So Rand's kind of asking, is there another room where I could go sit? He didn't want to go back upstairs and shut himself away with Matt's sullen withdrawal. Maybe a private dining room that's not being used. There's the library. She pointed to a door. Through there to your right at the end of the hall. Maybe it's empty at this hour. And he says, if you see Master Gil, would you tell him that Rand al'Thor needs to talk to him? I'll tell him. So he ends up going up. He's seeing some of his favorite books, The Travels of Jane Farstrider. He's even remembering his dad, holding, that book, kind of talking about it. He hears a throat clear behind him, and he suddenly realizes he wasn't alone. Ready to apologize for his rudeness, he turns. He was used to being taller than almost everyone he met, but at this time his eyes traveled up and up and up, and his mouth fell open. Then the head came almost as tall as the 10-foot ceiling, a nose as broad as the face, so wide that it was more a snout than a nose. Eyebrows that hung down like tails. A little bit more there than he just Trolloc, he yelled out aloud. I wish you humans wouldn't do that, rambled a voice as deep as a drum. So few of us remember us. It's our own fault, I suppose. And he goes on about how old he is. He's after about 6 generations now, right after the War of the Hundreds Years. Too long. And then he kind of introduces himself, and we meet Loyal, son of Arryn, son of Halen. Your name sings in my ears, Rand al'Thor. That sounded like a ritual greeting to Rand. He returned the bow. Your name sings in my ears, Loyal, son of Arryn, son of Holland, right? Just he's kind of like stumbling over his words. It was all a little uneasy, and so he goes on to say, "You humans are very excited. I just kind of wish you guys wouldn't yell Trolloc.
Not a good thing.
Not a good thing at us." He says he's an ogier. He said he's just about 90 years old, and so Loyal is actually a pretty cool dude. As soon as we meet him, he's a pretty cool guy, and he's obviously going to be a pretty big deal moving forward, even to where just from where we will get to in the rest of today.
Yeah. What did you think of so we meet him, we find out that he's old. He's not about 90 years old, older than old Sinbui, and he's in there reading books. He's in the library. I mean, he talks about how when he first entered the city, they all were yelling Trolloc, and a mob chased him. And thankfully, the Queensmen, were able to kind of stop the mob, and they get him in here. And even Master Gillis are like, hey, can you stay in the library? Like, people are leaving and stuff. And nothing. He doesn't mean any offense by it, but he's a businessman, and these people are just the Ogier don't leave their steading very often. And there's a reason for that. But what did you think of Loyal, I guess, because even over the next couple of chapters, I mean, just his personality, who he is, he's likable, right?
He's a really nice guy. He's really nice. He's obviously very intelligent. I mean, he's probably rivals Moraine in some respects. And I think it's kind of interesting because it seems like so far we've just kind of had, you have the dark friends and, kind of like the evil side. And then you kind of just I guess if you want to call it the light, but also kind of just not necessarily neutral, but people that certainly aren't, they just want, nothing to do with like the dark friends and stuff like that, but they're not necessarily like champions of the light. And so he is really this first character where he almost, kind of falls in the middle a little bit. Like, I mean, he's not obviously a dark friend or anything, but he talks more about, like the steadings and the groves and kind of, and so that was kind of interesting. Like, to get this almost like when you think about the Tinkers we had, they're like, we kind of do things our way. It's different than, like how people do in certain cities and stuff. So it is kind of just interesting as this world is building, just getting more kind of perspectives on people, which ties into the whole big world, like politics and, history and all this stuff, culture and all this stuff.
Yeah. What is your culture value? What your way of life, and talking about the Tinkers, as you said, they have a different way of life and their values are different, but they fit into our world and they're needed. They're very necessary. And it's like the Ogier, I mean, they built this city, right? That was one of the things, I think when the song came out, we built this city. They were talking about, that was the Ogier. They wrote that song. We built this city. All right. And so, they, but it's like, and actually really, when you ask them about that, stone is just something that they got into. Really, it's the groves that they're interested in, the natural life and things. So and these histories, Loyal, when he goes to various places, he went to Ilion and he went to Tyr. He says that their names were not the names that he thought they were going to be. From what he read in the books, like so many things had changed. He had to go out and see the world. I ask you why what you thought about Loyal, because he calls himself a little hot-headed, a little as if he's rash or whatever. He said that the elders always said that I was too hot-headed, and I fear I've proven them right. I wonder if they have realized that I'm even gone. So he left before they could grant his leaving. He just rushed out. He was afraid another 10 years would go, or by the time they decided he could go, he would be old enough to go on his own. So he's a young Ogier, and making his way into the world. He has, and actually Rand kind of sees him as having that same sort of like, even though he's much older, that he's like Matt, Perrin, and Rand in maturity, or just like this sort of giddy, boyish, let's go into the world and explore it and just be adventurous. And he's still got that gleam in his eye, wanting to go just be out there with his books and and record things. See the world that he's been reading about in his books. And I actually thought that was really interesting. I think of Robert Jordan, and when he wrote this series, all of the different cultures and ways of life that he weaves into this story makes you kind of want to know more about those types of people. And it's sort of, although we have this great, awesome series where that's all there, it's like to learn about those, he had to travel and study those like different peoples and cultures and understand what it was like for them to be woven together. So that was neat that you could almost see Robert Jordan in the character Loyal a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and then Loyal tells us some pretty interesting things, right? He looks at Rand and thinks, no, excuse me. First, he tells us, he talks about like an Aielman, right? And again, this happens a lot with Rand in the passage we're reading. We'll see later with more gaze. It says, I'm not an Aielman. I'm from the Two Rivers. He just, everyone, all these people now that we're in a bigger city where people have dealt with more cultures and stuff. Everyone seems to look at Rand and say, "Well, you sound like somebody from the Two Rivers, but you certainly don't look like somebody from the Two Rivers." And then Loyal gives us a little bit of kind of a history lesson on the Ta'veren, right?
Yes. Yeah. Do you have that pulled up?
I do. Yeah. Ta'veren, Loyal said. Rand blinked. What? Ta'veren. Loyal rubbed behind a pointed ear with one blunt finger and gave a little shrug. Elder Haman always said I never listened, but sometimes I did. Sometimes I listen. Of course, how the pattern is woven. I never really thought about it, he said. It just was. Well, not exactly. You see, the Wheel of Time weaves the pattern of the ages, and its threads are used as lives. It is not fixed. The pattern, not always. If a man tries to change the direction of his life, and the pattern has room for it, the wheel just weaves on and takes it in. There's always room for small changes, but sometimes the pattern simply won't accept a big change, no matter how hard you try. Rand nodded. I could live on a farm in Edmund's Field, and that would be a small change. If I wanted to be a king, though, he laughed, and Loyal gave a grin that almost split his face in two. His teeth were white and as broad as his chisels. Yes, that's it. But sometimes the change chooses you, or the wheel chooses it for you. And sometimes the wheel bends a life thread or several threads in such a way that all the surrounding threads are forced to swirl around it. And those force other threads, and those still others, and on and on. The first bending make the web that is Ta'veren, and there is nothing you can do to change that, not until the pattern itself changes. The web, that word, I don't even know how to pronounce that. Moralian, I don't know. It's called. It can last for weeks or for years. It can take in a town or even the whole pattern. Arthur Hawkwing was Ta'veren, so was Luce Theron Kingslayer. For that matter, I suppose he left out a booming chuckle. Elder Haman would be proud of me. He always droned on and on about the books, about traveling, where much more. And traveling were much more interesting, but I did listen sometimes.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Loyal knows.
And then he says that he wants to travel with Rand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he does. And again, back to the beginning of this episode when we talked about Rand wanting to be in secret and stuff. He thinks like he's an ogre. He's huge. Just sitting there, he's taller than most men. It doesn't seem like it's going to be, a good idea actually. So yeah, that's sort of then he's kind of wondering, who's chasing them and all of that stuff. It's brought up. Tarvalon is kind of brought up, right? And Loyal says that there's a very fine grove at Tarvalon, and I've been told the Aes Sedai keep it well tended. Besides, it is not just the groves I went to see. Perhaps you are not another Arthur Hawkwing, but for a time at least, part of the world will shape itself around you. Perhaps is even now shaping itself around you. man, that's something that you'd want to see, right? You're around a Taviran.
Oh
right?
yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and Matt and Rand kind of begins to wonder it would have been good to have somebody else along. The way Matt was behaving, being with him was almost like being alone. The ogre was a comforting presence. Maybe he was he was young as ogre reckoned age, but it seemed unflappable as a rock, just like Tam. So yeah, the idea of, well, I mean, having somebody else that could, that could go along with them, but how do you hide somebody 10 feet tall? He says, I don't think it's a good idea. Even if Moraine finds us here, we'll be in danger all the way to Tarval.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And at least in consolidation, he wants someone to talk with, and to play stones.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Right. Yeah. So, all right. Well, this brings us to two kind of chapters here that just go right together: the long chase and rescue. As I'm going to let you kind of take over on these ones.
Yeah, and really these we might touch on these a little bit more in the extended edition. So be sure to check that out. Talk about some of these white cloaks and their dynamic. I've always found the white cloaks really interesting. Just because they're right now in the city of Caemlyn. We keep hearing about them. You can see that they were in Baerlon. They're in Caemlyn. There's a group of them chasing down Egwene and Perrin. So yeah, and we know just based upon last episode that Perrin. We kind of find out here that when they were out, they were captured by these white cloaks and taken in, and they're basically being called dark friends essentially because they were with wolves. And, Perrin ends up killing for the first time. So they have him in here, and they're questioning him and Egwene. And we're really seeing this through Nynaeve and Moraine and Lan's perspective as they travel towards Caemlyn. They realize that the coin that she gave to the boys, one of them she can still sense, and she at least knows that she can now go and help. After she found out what she found out in Whitebridge and knows that the boys maybe are still alive, just on the run. And it looks like they're headed towards Caemlyn. She then goes north to try and find Perrin, and they come across a camp of white cloaks where the boy is being held. She decides to free him, and there's some people will. This is why we'll do some of this in the extended edition. This is such a heavy section because there's some really good stuff between Nynaeve and Lan. They're always almost like there's this unspoken kind of competition between like.
Right.
Who can sneak up on who?
There's definitely some tension between.
Yeah, and it's really cool actually. Like Lan has respect for her, she's getting the respect for Lan, but there's a silence between them too. But yet, I don't know, just a way in which, like, even when Lan asked her to be a part of the distraction and to help with like cutting the horses. So what they wanted to do is, Lan is going to go in there. He's going to rescue Perrin and Egwene. They don't know that Egwene's necessarily there, though. That's actually Nynaeve. Her connection to her and the power that is in her is what allows her to know that Egwene is there, and hold on to a few more horses so they can get out. But he Lan is approaching her saying, "We need your help. Are you in?" And then he nods. I mean, as soon as she says yes, like helping, Emmons Fielders, absolutely. She is. He's nodding already. He knew what the answer would be. It's just the courtesy of asking, and
right.
It's just kind of neat to see that little tiny back and forth, and just sort of Robert Jordan building up this relationship between Nynaeve, Lan, and Moraine, and even Moraine and Lan. Like, you're getting all the dynamics, which is really neat. So yeah, she sneaks down and she's at the edge of the White Cloak camp, and basically Moraine calls down lightning. Okay?
Yeah.
Calls down some lightning and scares the horses. She had loosened, had cut some of the ropes. And so just a little, that scare, right, sends the horses just jerking their heads, and boom, they're just off and scattering in various, directions. One thing that's also interesting about this is that Lan notices there are wolves around, and that, for her to be on the lookout, really, they should not approach you or be near you. But he thinks it's interesting that they are there. And so she decides she's there. She recognizes Egwene's presence, so she decides to take Bella as one of the horses that she's going to use, because riding double is going to slow them down. They're worried that some of the White Cloaks will get on their horses, and they don't want to be riding double. And that, Land even says as he goes in here, he doesn't know the state of Perrin or the boy. He may not be able to travel stealthily, right? So he wants to make sure that they have enough horses to do that. So Nynaeve is stunned when she sees wolves chasing the scared horses away, but she is too busy getting away from the camp to pay much attention to these wolves. So, and we know that Perrin has a connection with them. And then the next chapter, to make this short, maybe this is what we'll focus on in the extended edition. We get more of a conversation between Child Bayar, one of the White Cloaks, and Perrin. We get this back and forth, about them. We learn more about Elias as a warder, right?
Right, and then when Nynaeve, once they've rescued them, and Nynaeve is talking to them, she's overlooking Perrin, and she says, some things like, "I don't understand. Your eyes have this kind of yellow to them, but it's not yellow eye fever."
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Then Moraine's like yellow, like you say, like she definitely knows there's something. Okay, there's something big about it. There's no foretelling this. Moraine spoke it to herself. So, and like I said, we're gonna cover some more of that these in extended edition.
Yeah.
So, okay, so basically, that now we just know that they're going to Caemlyn, which brings us back to pretty much. We'll see them again. They'll all meet up together, but the next time we see them are with when they all show up. So Mat and Rand, now back to them. Chapter 39, Weaving of the Web. Are you coming? He asked again. Mat glowered from where he lay, curled up in a ball on his bed. Take that, Trolloc, you're so friendly with. Blood and ashes, Mat. He's not a Trolloc. You're just being stubborn, stupid. And so this is definitely an issue that Mat will have with Loyal as in these next couple chapters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's super suspicious. He's just stayed up there away from everyone else and doesn't want to go see. This is huge, I mean, Mat would be the one who would be pulling Rand. Like we get that from Mat in the beginning of this book, that he's the one who pulls them into trouble, and now he wants to stay away from everybody. So clearly something's wrong with him. We just don't know exactly what it is, so Rand realizes that this is this is the day to kind of go see Logain, go see the false dragon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a handful of things happen here actually. So as Rand is actually going to go out and try to see him. He is running. He's basically going out to the streets. They've got Logain in a cage. They're kind of bringing him into the city. And there's a beggar. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. That Rand comes across, and he talks about, he's really weird. He says, the beggar, whatever ill chance he had led the man to find him like this. Rand was suddenly sure that, dark friend or not, he did not want to meet him face to face. This beggar, he keeps seeing him, and it almost feels like he has to escape him. And then he does. We don't actually ever find out who that beggar is, but it's just somebody that he's seeing, right? And so he's actually worried. He's like, what do I got to do to lose this guy?
Yeah.
Is it worth it to go see the false dragon? So he does end up losing him. It says like the beggar would not give up. He was sure of it, though he could not say why. The ragged shape would be working its way through the crowds at the very minute, searching. And if Rand returned to see Logain, he ran the risk of meeting. For a moment, he considered going back to the Queen's blessing, but he was sure he would never get another chance to see a queen, and he hoped he would never have another chance to see a false dragon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To be this close and then to be scared away by a beggar who could be a potential dark friend. He's like, nah, that's sort of cowardice. I'm gonna. There's a way. I can find a way to do both here. Instead of going back and sitting at the Queen's blessing. Yeah, I'm gonna press forward.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and so this is where things get really start to get kind of interesting. So he does end up seeing him. He says the false dragon was a tall man with long dark hair curling around his broad shoulders. He held himself upright against the sway of the wagon, with one hand on the bars over his head. His clothes seemed ordinary, a cloak and coat and breeches that would not caused comment in any farming village, but the way he wore them, the way he held himself. Logain was a king in every inch of him. The cage might as well not have been there, which I thought was really interesting. And so then he says, they're thinking about, he's defeated, right? They're talking about how it's interesting just the way he is. He says, Rand leaned out a bit further to try to catch one last sight of the cage man. He was defeated, wasn't he? Light. He wouldn't be in a bloody cage if he wasn't defeated. And that's why they talk about they've got the Aes Sedai there. Why were the Aes Sedai watching him, he wondered. They're keeping him from touching the true source, silly. He jerked up to look toward a girl's voice, and suddenly his precarious seat was gone. He had only time to realize that he was toppling backwards, falling, when something struck his head and a laughing Logain chasing him into a spinning darkness. So now this brings us to the Web Titan. So this is where essentially Rand is kind of like knocked unconscious for a second, but he does have he has like this quick kind of a dream here, which is interesting. He's sitting at a table with Logain and Moraine. The Aes Sedai and the false dragon sat watching him silently, as if neither knew the other was there. So that's like just something that's definitely kind of interesting. And so then that brings then he wakes up, and we meet two characters that Ez does not particularly care for. As he was telling me, he's like, those guys.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So as we get in here to the palace, one thing just to back up a little bit, when to me it's such a cool visual. I this is one of those things I wonder how they're going to do the false dragon, like how they're going to portray this in the show, and like when you see sort of like him as he's going in, as the Aes Sedai are taking him in, and he's in a cage, right? But he doesn't look like he's in a cage. And he puts these really in Rand's dream, kind of in the darkness is wrapping around him, he hears Logain. I don't know that Logain actually put his head back and laughed and like did this like sort of madman, laughter or whatever. But I would love if that really was what happened, as he's just sort of defying everyone, like just a crazed man laughing, that they've got him in here in this car, almost like it's in the plan. Like this is a part of his plan to be captured, to be taken into this. Place.
I mean, certainly it seems to me, just the way they describe the way he's standing, like he doesn't seem like he's, when you think about somebody being in a cage, like, oh, they're probably weak and tired. It doesn't seem like it. So yeah, I definitely found that to be interesting. So, Rand, we meet a boy and a girl here whose names I don't have highlighted.
So you have Elaine, the daughter heir, Elaine of Andor, and her brother Gawain. I say Gawain. I've heard people say Gawain.
Gawain, that's what I'm saying too. Yeah.
Yeah. So Gawain. So Elaine and Gawain, and they have a half brother named Galad, who shows up. So, and the way I described it to you was like, oh, there's Elaine and her brother Gawain, and then here comes this freaking jerk, Galad. He's their half brother. He's kind of annoying. But no, I mean, he's actually. It ends up that Galad is very interesting. Their half brother is very interesting and has an interesting connection to the whole story. So yeah, but Elaine is that daughter heir. And she's with her brother Gawain. So they were also there, they're inside the palace wall. Like he didn't even, Rand didn't even realize he was climbing the palace wall. That was the wall to the gardens, because, but really where they're taking Logain is right into the heart of this palace, into the heart of Caemlyn. And so he's right there at the wall, kind of seeing as they enter and stuff. And then he, falls backward, hits his head, and she's trying to wrap his head up and help him a little bit. She just cares for, Elaine has a sweetheart, and she is a sweetheart, and she wants to kind of take care of things and stuff, but she's also the princess. So
Right. Yeah, so basically she feels in a way she wants to help Rand because his hands get a little cut up, and she's telling her brother, yeah, I told you, hold still. Does she always expect everyone to do it? She tells them. A flash of surprise crossed the young man's face. Most of the time she does, and most of the time they do. Hold this, put your hand here while I do this. And so then she's working on Rand's hands since they get kind of scraped up there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. And this is this is Galad who shows up, the older half brother, who they describe him, and people might say, well, I know why, Sir Ezra said he's annoying. It's because he's extremely good looking. And he is. He's extremely, all of the girls think he is just I don't know. He's good to look at. All right. And he also is extremely, he's not just extremely handsome, but he's also very much, a rule follower. He will not bend any of the rules, even to a fault. It's sort of like if we're going to break a rule, the rule needs to be kind of rewritten then type of thing. So if that's the law, that's the law. So he's the one who sort of sees this and realizes that this is, maybe an intruder. He calls the guard on Rand, and they think Rand is a serious threat. So Talonvor, the guard that shows up, is like, okay, this guy's a serious threat. And he shouldn't be. Although, here's something interesting. When he was leaving the Queen's Blessing, Rand was leaving, he walks past a couple of the guards, at least one of the guards, who kind of says to him, hey, be careful out there. When you go to see the false dragon, keep, basically kind of saying, keep people who are wearing the red around you. This mob could kind of break out. He's like, I want you back here. You'd be good in a fight. He had sized him up and just thought, well, he'd be good. This guy would be good to have here in case some fight breaks out. And so then you have Talonvor, this guard, who looks at Rand and says, yeah, he's a serious threat. And I think other people will recognize, just like Loyal did, Loyal called him an Aielman, saying that he is Aiel. And he's like, no, this is the third or fourth time I've been called this. And it's the fact that he looks like an Aielman that sets off Talonvor. And he thinks that, well, this guy's a super threat. Get back, get away from him, stay away. So there's something that tells him Rand is definitely a scary dude.
Right.
So
right, well, right here, when they're talking, Rand's trying to leave, right? He's like, oh, thanks. He touched the scarf around his head. Thank you. Right after he's been put up here. Without even telling us your name, Gawain said, a poor payment for Elaine's care. I've been wondering about you. You sound like an Andor man, though not a Caemlynner. Certainly, but you look like, and then it gets cut off, right? Well, our names. Courtesy would suggest you give us ours. Looking longingly at the wall, Rand gave his right name before he thought what he was even doing. From Edmund's Field, and then he even added from Edmund's Field in the Two Rivers, from the west, very far to the rest. And so I'm trying to see. Right after that is it's a little bit before he ends up meeting more gays, but
yeah. So that's all that. There's a little bit of a. They're hoping to bring the Captain Guard, Gareth Bryn, or Gareth Bryn, however you want to say that, to question him and stuff. So just because they want the Captain General to show, because he's kind of this big of a deal. And it's Elaine who really claims guest right and tries to do everything she can to no, don't hurt him. He's with us. We saw him come over this wall. It's fine. You guys are freaking out over nothing. But everyone's on high alert here because there's talk of dark friends. There are people wearing white in the city, and this man has climbed over the wall, and Logain is here, the false dragon. Is someone trying to free him? Yep. What's going on?
Exactly. Oh yeah, exactly. And so she does end Rand does get brought before more gays here, right? And Elaine is there as well. And this is actually pretty interesting. I kind of thought this line was interesting. So as they're doing this, Elaine's standing there. She's saying, "May I speak, Mother?" When Morghese nodded her assent, Elaine told the events simply from the time she first saw Rand climbing up the slope of the wall. He expected her to finish by proclaiming the insane, innocence of what he had done. But instead, she said, "Mother, often you tell me I must know our people." This is where they actually get into some cool little world building here. And so she says, how can I come to know anything real or true under such circumstances? In speaking with this young man, I have already learned more about the people of Two Rivers, what kind of people they are, than I ever could from books. She says, I beg you not to misuse a loyal subject and one who has taught me so much about the people you rule. A loyal subject from the Two Rivers, Morgay's side. My child, you should know. You should pay more heed to those books. The Two Rivers have not seen a tax collector in 6 generations, nor the Queen's Guards in 7. I dare say they seldom even think to remember that they are part of the realm. Well,
whose fault is that?
Here. Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say.
Right.
Okay. If you haven't sent a tax collector, or provided them with protection, then how is it their fault that what are they supposed to do? Be like, oh, hey, let's pay taxes. It's supposed to be the other way around. You're supposed to go there, say, no, remind them, hey, you're part of the kingdom. We need your taxes.
Right.
And then you provide them protection, and then maybe freaking Trollocs wouldn't attack.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So let me just get that out there.
Oh man. Hey, funny, or an interesting point, actually. A part of the reason why they don't send a tax collector there, and we'll get into this later, is a lot of stuff in Caemlyn, like who becomes ruler and what happened to previous rulers and the turmoil in the city and vying for power is sort of why they lost track of the edge of their kingdom. And also they're stubborn Two Rivers folk and things like that. But
right. And it says Rand was even like surprised when they tell him what it is actually part of Andor.
Right. Yeah. So
the queen saw him and smiled repeatedly. Yeah, like, you see, child, like talking to her daughter. So, then this is where we get another person here. Morgay she rose from her stool and slowly came down from the dais to stand before him. From the Two Rivers, she said. She reached a hand towards his head. He pulled away from her touch, and she let her hand drop. With that red in his hair and the gray eyes, Two Rivers people are dark of hair and eye, and they seldom have such height. Her hand darted out to push back his coat sleeve, exposing lighter skin the sun had not reached so often, or such skin. It was an effort not to clench his fist. I was born in Edmund's Field, he said stiffly. My mother was an outlander. That's where my eyes come from. My father, Tam Althor, a shepherd and farmer as I am. And then she touches his sword, right? She says, a sheep herder from the Two Rivers with a heron mark sword.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where, again, things, there's something about Rand, right? Things are getting
a little suspicious.
More and more interesting. Yeah, I mean, and that's something that we heard Tam talk about his birth and all this kind of stuff. So, look, more and more and more looking like there are obviously some events surrounding Rand's birth that we'll get to at some point.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Now, there's Elida, the Aes Sedai advisor, is there, too. And I was going to kind of jump to that, if that's okay. She's talking about... Elaine and Gawain were not supposed to see Logain, but they defied her orders, and they went to the same spot that Rand was at, and were trying to look over and see him as he entered. And so they weren't supposed to do that. And she's kind of saying, I've seen him up close. He's as dangerous as a wolf. I wish that they had never brought him near Caemlyn. And the woman on the stool did not take her eyes up from her knitting, but it's she who speaks here. He will be dealt with in Tar Valon. Wow. And basically she's kind of saying, what is important is that the people see that the light has once again vanquished the dark, and that they see you are a part of that victory, Morgaze. She waves this dismissive hand. I would still rather he had never come to Caemlyn. Elaine, I know your mind. Mother, Elaine protested, I do mean to obey you. Truly I do. Do you? Morgaze asked in a mock surprise and then chuckled. Yes, you do try to be a dutiful daughter, but you constantly test how far you may go. Well, I did the same with my mother. That spirit will stand you in good stead when you ascend to the throne. But you are not queen yet, child. You have disobeyed me, and you had your look at Loghain. Be satisfied with that. On the journey north, you will not be allowed within 100 paces of him, neither you nor Gawain. If I did not know just how hard your lessons will be in Tar Valon, I would send Leni along to see you both obey. She, at least, seems able to make you do as you must. So now we get a reference that Elaine is also going to Tar Valon, and that Loghain is just passing through here. These Aes Sedai are gathering themselves, maybe gathering resources, stopping in to talk with Elaida, and moving on to Tar Valon, where it's said that they will gentle Loghain, this false dragon.
Yeah.
Look out.
Yeah. Yeah. Man. And then, I did have one other thing here. Just, I want back to what Eladia says, or
Elaida. Yeah.
Eladia?
Mm-hmm.
Elaida. Sorry.
Yep.
So sorry. Just because she also, she also kind of confirms a little bit about Rand, right? She says, surely he is too young to have earned a heron-marked blade. He cannot be any older than Gawain, but it belongs with him. The queen looked and said, how can that be? She says, I do not know, Morghese. He is too young, yet still it belongs with him, and he with it. Look at his eyes. Look how he stands, how the sword fits him, and he it. He is too young, but the sword is his.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the sword. Yeah, but the sword is his. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that was
that is good. That is good.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty interesting. It could be part of the pattern. Okay. That's
right. Exactly.
So, okay. So basically, then they let Rand go. He's given kind of the right, as they're walking him out here, they're talking about some courtesies and all of this stuff. He's kind of talking in his mind, I am Tam Althor's son. Even if I wasn't born in Two Rivers, I am Tam Althor's son. That's just something that's been going on and on and on. And so then he does end up leaving. So old friends and new threats, aka Avengers Assemble.
Yeah,
right. Is basically what this chapter is. So Rand ends up making his way back, to the queen's blessing, and he's having kind of a conversation with Master Gil, and then Master Gil says something, and they're talking about like, Matt and all these things, and he says, well, hold on a second, I never mentioned Matt to Elaine. It can't be. Suddenly a huge smile lit up his face, and he ran for the kitchens. Ram threw open the door to the kitchens, and there they were. Moraine rested her serene eyes on him, unsurprised. Nynaeve and Egwene ran laughing to throw their arms around him, with Perrin crowding in behind them, all three patting his shoulders as if they had been convinced that he was really there. In the doorway leading to the stable yard, Lan lounged with one boot up on the door frame, dividing his attention between the kitchens and the yard outside. So, yeah, the band is back together.
They're back, yeah. Yeah, a couple interesting. Yeah, in the beginning of this chapter, it's pretty neat. Quick little nod here to the cats and the rats. Somebody's trying to steal Master Gil's cats. Not a good thing. It's important later. It's one of those that should Sir Ezra pointed out. Yeah, I think I should. And then as you say, he goes in here and really once after he meets them too. Let's just keep moving on. I mean, he starts to tell about going into the palace. No one freaking believes him. No one believes him.
I know.
Right? I mean, you must be lying, right? I mean, it's like Master Gil even almost thinks I almost believe that you aren't making fun. Like he almost believes it. And then Loyal murmurs to Viren. Like he's telling the story and everyone's sort of like, the Queen? You don't say. Gareth Bryn, what? Lord Captain Commander was there. How did you get out? Blood and ashes, Rand, right? And he's like, everyone thinks I'm lying today. So that I thought that was kind of neat. Just that, like, crazy things happen to Rand, right? He's in this thrust into this epic tale, this crazy story. Like, guys, I'm not making this up. This really did happen. So that was kind of neat.
Well, right here, when they're all kind of catching up really quick, they talk about, well, Tom didn't make it, and then we'll get to Matt. But I do say Matt's upstairs, like he's not really feeling well, he's sick, and so we get back to him. Yeah, but then there's some stuff right here. Yes.
Yeah.
Moraine said she could find you and Matt, and she did. When we rode into the city, the rest of us couldn't stop staring. Well, all except Lan, of course. All the people, the buildings, everything. His thick curls swung as he shook his head in disbelief. It's all so big, and so many people. Some of them kept staring at us, too, shouting red or white, like it made some kind of sense. Egwene touched Rand's sword, fingering the red wrappings. What does it mean? Nothing, he said. Nothing important. We're leaving for Tarvalon, remember? Wow. The red or white. It comes back.
Yeah. Yep.
And I just noticed it. I just really paid attention to it just because you told me to.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy. It's sort of, and I also think it's why Rand got a little favor with the Queen, is because of the wrappings on his sword. Like all of that works in his favor. And then, I just mentioned the rats and the mice again. This is one of the first things that Moraine notices is, you have several cats. You have a mouse problem or a rat problem, right? Like what is it? We have mice or rats. And so he tells her rats and she's cued into something. So it sets off an alarm in Moraine's mind. I had this weird thought of like, in Harry Potter, you have Crookshanks, the cat, jumping around all over the place. I'm just thinking, I want to go to the Queen's Blessing and see like 4 or 5 cats just walking around. Like that little detail, if they could throw that in, as they're filming, it would just be really cool. So
yeah. And so then we start talking about Matt, right? Matt's not sick exactly. You'll see. He flung open the door to the room he shared with Matt. Look who's here. Matt was still curled up in a ball in the bed just as Rand had left him. How do you know they're really who they look like? He said hoarsely. How do I know you're who you look like? Matt's like
gone.
He's kind of freaking out.
Yeah.
He's like gone. And Eve kneels beside his bed and put a hand to his face, pushing up his headcloth. He jerked back from her with a scornful look. His eyes were bright and glazed. You're burning, she said, but you should not be sweating with this much fever. She could not keep worry out of her voice. Rand, you and Perrin fetch some clean cloths, as much cool water as you can carry. I'll bring your temperature down. Pretty naive, Matt spat. A wisdom isn't supposed to think of herself as a woman, is she? Not a pretty woman. But you do, don't you? Now, you can't make yourself forget that you're a pretty woman now, and it frightens you. It's like, oh, dude, he's being kind of weird. He says the same thing, pretty Egwene, all this stuff. He's kind of getting kind of weird. So then, again, it's almost like, I talked about it before, right? How you get like, it's like that. I think about like when you watch police shows, right? And you got the police in there, and then the FBI comes in, like, we're in charge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same thing that happens here. Is Nynaeve's tending to him. It seems a little bit beyond her thing.
Right.
Moraine walks in, and she like can tell, like, she knows what's going on
instantly. Yeah. She's in mid conversation.
Instantly. Yeah. She says, how did you come by this? I asked you if Mordeth had given you anything. I asked you and I warned you, and he said that he had not. He didn't, Rand said. Matt took it from the treasure room. Moraine looked at him. Her eyes seemed to burn as much as Matt's. He almost stepped back before she turned away. I didn't know until after we were separated. I didn't know. You did not know, Moraine studied Matt. He still lay with his knees pulled up to his chest, still snarled soundlessly at her, and his hand yet fought land to reach her with the dagger.
Yeah, so right, let me back up just a sec, because right here, he stared back at her intently. He bared his teeth in silent snarling. Rickus, pulled himself into an even tighter knot. Okay, so slowly she put one hand on him lightly, on a knee drawn up to his chest, and a convulsion shook him at her touch. A shudder of revulsion spasmed through his entire body, and abruptly he pulled one hand out, slashing at her face with the ruby-hilted dagger. 1 minute Lan was in the doorway, the next he was at the bedside, as if he had not bothered with the intervening space, and his hand caught Matt's wrist, stopping the slash as it had struck stone. Still, Matt held it in that tight ball. Only the hand of the dagger tried to move, straining against the warder's implacable grip. Matt's eyes never left Moraine, and they burned with hate. So, like, dude, I mean, it's like he was trying to kill her, right?
Thanks for pointing that out. Yeah,
like, whoa.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's just crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So back to just where I was there. She says, it's a wonder you even got this far. I felt the evil of it when I laid eyes on him, the touch of Marshadar, but a Fade could sense it for miles. Even though he would not know exactly where, he would know it was near, and Marshadar would draw his spirit while his bones remembered that this same evil swallowed an army. Dreadlords, Fades, Trollocs, and all. Some dark friends could probably feel it too, those who have truly given away their souls. There could not help but be those who would wonder and at suddenly feeling this as if the very air around them itched. They would be compelled to seek it. It should have drawn them to it as a magnet draws iron filings. They talk about whether there were dark friends and there were stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, So okay. As we said, the dagger, obviously a bad idea. Really, really bad. So it is. So I guess it's a kind of a combination of two of the things. I guess I initially thought it would be almost like a tracking device, right? Like you think about the coin that Moraine gives them. So that's kind of similar here. So like Mordeth and obviously other dark friends and stuff would be able to kind of know where they're at. But then it also is kind of corrupting him.
Yes.
So it's kind of I thought it would be like maybe one or the other, but it was a combination.
Right, exactly. That power that is working on Matt and causing him to be more paranoid and to become less himself. And it's his strong will. I mean, he himself being, because Loyal had said not only that Rand was Ta'veren, but it sounded as if his friends were as well. So the fact that he is Ta'veren and has this strong will is really what has kept him alive. Anyone else would probably be consumed already and would have given in long ago. So Matt has the strength to sort of hold this off until Moraine gets here to intervene, and she does do a weaving that will kind of separate him from it and will kind of help him, right? It kind of returns him back. She's going to spend some time in this room with him. But yeah, it was a tracking device. So it was how those Fades and Dark Friends were tracking him all along the way. They knew that this was an evil presence, even though they feared it. They fear the dagger and they fear the presence that it represents. They can find him. And there's someone else who's tracking him too, that can sense this presence. So it's a lot. And then it's twofold. It's definitely a bad move. So
yeah, absolutely. So then they talk about how Egwene says they're talking about this is bad, like, right, because they can still kind of like if they know where we're at, and Egwene's like, well, we're in Caemlyn, they can't get to us as long as they can't. The warder cut her off. The Fades are building their numbers in the countryside. That's plain enough from the sign. And if you know what to look for, already there are more Trollocs than they need just to watch all the ways out of the city. A dozen fists at least. So it's like, hey, just remember, like, I know we're all back together, but we still gotta press forward.
Right. Yep. Exactly. So. Well, and the big thing is, too, at one point during that chapter, they get kind of sick thinking about the fact that there are Trollocs outside of the city surrounding it, and Moraine sort of says, if we leave, they will leave. It's us. Mm-hmm. They're not here for these people. In the presence of this dagger, Matt, you boys, this is what they're after. As you said, Lan said that the Fades were building their numbers out there. And so they're worried that just the sight of all these people here being run through by Trollocs and stuff, it just seems awful to them, so they have to kind of get out. And then on into the next chapter, really. So we're kind of at the end there. Moraine's going to heal. She's going to see to Matt, and she sends the rest of them out of the room. And he then, Rand takes everyone down to meet Loyal, right?
Yeah.
So we get to meet Loyal again. We get to talk to him, and that's a little abrupt, right? They have to kind of get used to seeing an Ogier, and it's and they exchange some of the news. They're talking about just various things that had kind of happened that the Ogier had come across, and Matt will come down too.
Yeah, Matt and Moraine come down, and Matt looks a lot better, but Moraine says that she can't sever the ties to the dagger because that has to be done in Tar Valon.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Right. So they know, yeah, he has now. He's definitely tied to Moraine and Tarvalon. Like his path is set. He has to go there. So, yeah, it was kind of crazy, and he feels like honestly he can't even remember a lot of it. Like he feels a little bit shooken up. Like he remembers Whitebridge and Tom, but then after that it gets hazier. I don't really remember arriving in Caemlyn at all. He eyed Loyal.
It's just blacked out. It's basically just black. It's like a big haze. You can't remember any of it. Yeah.
Right. Yep. So, whew. He says you can't hold a man to blame for what he does when he's crazy, can you? You know, so that is sort of an old Matt saying, coming back to himself. You were always crazy, Perrin said, and it sounded sort of like old times. So they start to kind of, joke with each other a little bit and stuff. And Nynaeve's got tears in her eyes, and she's just glad that he's okay, and we're all right. All of them are thrust into this adventure and this journey. None of them they don't know quite what's all at stake, and the consequences of not telling Moraine that you took a dagger. What? Yeah, really, it's not gonna be that big of a deal. So, yeah. So he still has the dagger. He has to keep it with him. Actually, it's important that it does stay with him. If he's separated from it, I think she even hints at that it could that he could lose his life. So until we could actually separate him from it, like he's stuck with that. So
yeah. And so then Moraine is introduced to Loyal, and this is where Rand tells her that he promised Loyal he could join him. Yeah, and so the party's gonna get a little bit bigger, and Moraine is pretty much okay with it, and just that Land's gonna have to keep guard, and this is when okay, well, even still we got to get. They start talking about how we're gonna leave. Caemlyn.
Yeah, exactly. Loyal's saying that he's been kind of confused, but that he knows that the children hate Aes Sedai. They're going over whether they could go to Elaida for help. Elaida, Moraine cut in sharply. What has Elaida Sedai to do with this? She was looking at Rand so hard that he wanted to lean back. She wanted to throw me in prison, he said slowly. All I wanted was a look at Loghain, but she wouldn't believe I was in the palace gardens with Elaine and Gawain by chance. And they were all staring at him as if he had suddenly sprouted a third eye, except Loyal. Queen Morgase let me go. She said there was no proof I meant any harm, and she was going to uphold the law no matter what Elaida suspected. He shook his head, and the memory of Morgase and all of her radiance, making him forget a minute that everyone was looking at him. Can you imagine me, meeting a queen? He says, she's beautiful, like the queens in the stories. So is Elaine and Gawain. You'd like Gawain, Perrin. Perrin? Matt? They were staring at him. Blood and ashes. I just climbed up on the wall for a look at the false dragon. I didn't do anything wrong, right? So they're kind of blown away. Like, what?
Wait, yeah, hold on a second. Yeah, you did all this? Like, what happened?
Yeah.
Let me see here. Moraine muttered something crossly. A queen, Perrin said, shaking his head. You really have had adventures. And so then all we met were some tinkers and some white cloaks. But to Rand and Matt, that probably would be adventure. So it's almost like, hey, like we're all coming back together, and look how far we've all come since Edmund's Field. I mean,
yeah. Now here's what's interesting. So like they're all kind of recounting what they had learned, and this is where you get like Robert Jordan kind of doing when he talks about ta'veren, like, yeah, if you want to be a farmer or you want to be like a blacksmith or whatever, you can choose. There's choice. There's the pattern has room for these different choices, but there are certain events, especially concerning ta'veren, that are almost fated. The wheel, no matter which way you turn, they're going to guide you to this path. So it's an intermixing of this like fate and free will, and it's fascinating because I think of like Perrin telling the story about the Tuathon, like these traveling people, the Tinkers, and it brings up Loyal. He kind of remembers something. He says, "I've just remembered something, Aes Sedai, something I have always wanted to ask an Aes Sedai if I ever see one." And she's like basically wanting him to make it brief, because he, Ogier can just go on and on and on, talk forever, right? Brief, he said as he was wondering. Yes, well, brief. There was a man came to Steading Shangtai a little time back. This was not unusual in itself at the time, since a great many refugees from come to the spine of the world, fleeing what you humans call the Aiel War. Rand grinned. A little time back, 20 years, near enough, right? He was at the point of death, though there was no wound or mark on him. The elders thought it might be something Aes Sedai had done. Loial gave Moraine an apologetic look, since as soon as he was within the steading, he quickly got well. A few months, one night he left without a word to anyone. Simply, he snuck away when the moon was down. He looked at Moraine's face and cleared his throat again. Yes, brief. Before he left, he told a curious tale, which he said he meant to carry to Tar-Valon. He said the Dark One intended to blind the eye of the world and slay the great serpent, kill time itself. The elders said he was as sound in mind as in body, and that was what he said. What I have wanted to ask is, can the Dark One do such a thing? Kill time itself and the eye of the world? Can he blind the eye of the great serpent? What does it mean? Rand expected almost anything from Moraine except what he saw. Instead of giving Loial an answer or telling him she had no time for it now, she stood there staring right through the Ogier, frowning in thought. Wow. And then Perrin says, that's what the Tinkers told us. Yes, Egwene said, the Aiel story. Moraine turned her head slowly. So you can picture this, right? So she's trying to quickly move on from the Ogier, and then he said, well, if you don't mind, can I ask a quick? Yeah, keep it brief. And he tells this story. And then they hear the story of the Ogier, and they say, well, the Tinkers said the same thing. And she slowly turns her head. No other part of her moved. What story? She said. It was an expressionless look she gave them, but it made Perrin take a deep breath. Though when he spoke, he was deliberate as ever. Some Tinkers crossing the waste, they said they could not. They said they could do that unharmed. Found Aiel dying after a battle with Trollocs. Before the last Aiel died, they were all women apparently. Told the Tinkers that what Loial just said. The Dark One, they call him Sightblinder, intended to blind the eye of the world. This was only 3 years ago, not 20. Does it mean something? Perhaps everything, Moraine said. And her face was still, she's staring at Rand. It's like this. It's just like, what? Yeah. And then it's all coming together.
It's getting real.
It's getting real. It's getting real. Like the web, right? This web of destiny is weaving itself, and you can see it. And what's kind of cool is, like Loial talks about ta'veren, and he's caught up in it, and he's like, holy, like this Ogier is like, Jesus, look at this. He had a story to tell. Then Perrin does. They weren't going to, they seem like minuscule things. You don't quite know the significance of it, but then to have Moraine there and to see it catch her attention, and then this is what she calls the pattern. She sees the weaving, this web of destiny. That they're all kind of caught up in. It's amazing. Man. Well, and then they go on to tell her about their dreams, right?
Right.
Because they had hidden that from her because they didn't know whether they could trust her, and it seemed pretty crazy. Is she gonna, is this gonna be some Red Aja situation where you guys think we're nuts? She had hinted at earlier, Lan had hinted at in the chapter with Elias that when Elias left as a warder, that the Red Aja were very interested in his leaving, in his yellow eyes, and wondering, quite a bit about him. So, like, it's just the Aes Sedai you got to be careful with.
Yeah. Well, and now we'll have to do an extended edition where we talk about like the differences between all of this stuff, because you've explained it to me before, like kind of the difference between. Like, okay, well, there's the power, right? Shadar and oh God, how am I'm blanking on the other side.
Saidin and Shadar,
Saidin and Shadar, right? Yeah. So that's like you've got the one power. Well, then ta'veren is also its own thing,
right? Yeah.
And so it's like okay, and so it's like they're different in their own thing, but they're both pretty powerful. Obviously pretty powerful things.
Yeah. Well, it's like they're still all flowing from the turning of the wheel, and the pattern itself. Like it's the truce. It's the power that turns the wheel, and then the wheel itself through that is weaving out, ta'veren from time to time. Not very many. These are these like pillars, these great moments in time where certain things need to happen to make a correction or to whatever. And yeah, Ta'Veren are that passage you read about with Loyal is really interesting, and it's just to note the influence that Ta'Veren have on other people and their own threads. You know, the threads are people, and so it's like to see them interact with each other, and every interaction paints this picture, and then to have all of them working sort of on their own, doing their own thing, having their own free will to do whatever. And then you've got Ta'Veren weaving in there that will pull those threads tighter and wind them closer together and send people on a certain course or a direction. It's just different, you know. It is. Yeah. We'll have to do a whole kind of deep discussion. Maybe we'll bring Nick on and really talk about it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Where to next? Quite a bit left, actually. Really.
Like to kind of get through the rest of this chapter here. Let me see here. So yeah, they asked their question. The parent is the one who says he thinks it's time to tell them about their dreams. She's displeased that the boys didn't bring this up sooner, but I think she also kind of knows. You know, Tom's influence had been there to kind of say they're not going to talk about Baal-Zimon and their freaking dreams, right? Dreaming about the Dark One. So she explains to the boys how they can keep Baal-Zimon from hurting them in their dreams by denying him. I deny you, right? You know, I deny the Dark One. And then so Perrin replies that he has already found his protection. So after hearing the conversation about the dreams, Loyal concludes that all three boys are Ta'Veren. Now he knows.
Yeah. So they are, Moraine said. Three of them, when I expected one. A great many things have happened that I did not expect. The news concerning the Eye of the World changes much. She paused. For a time, the pattern does seem to be swirling around all three of you, just as Loyal says, and the swirl will grow greater before it becomes less. Sometimes being Ta'Veren means the pattern is forced to bend to you, and sometimes it means the pattern forces you to the needed path. The web can still be woven many ways, and some of those designs would be disastrous for you, for the world. Yeah, we cannot remain in Caemlyn. so then we get to, all right, we need to leave. But how are we gonna go?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yes.
And the Ogier knows maybe we should take this way. A waygate.
Yeah.
Okay. This is where, and so, they're talking about it. They're going to use a waygate. Do you know the ways, Loyal? I do. I've never heard of Faldara, Loyal said, sounding relieved. In the days of the Trolloc Wars, it was known as the Mafal Dadernel. And so they're talking about this way that they can leave, right? Whether it is the Creator of Fate or even the Dark One, the pattern has chosen our path for us. No, Loyal says, an emphatic rumble like thunder. Everyone turned to look behind him, and he blinked under the attention, but there was nothing hesitant about the words. If we enter the ways, we will all die or be swallowed by the shadow.
Yeah. Yep. It's crazy. It's crazy. And so he's talking about this evil presence that is in the ways. And so first, let's just talk about the waygate. It's kind of what they go into a little bit in this next chapter. They talk about the ways and how they were created. They're created using the power, and they basically are outside of time, really. And like they're different. They're like you could travel, 100 miles in an hour. These gates can kind of it's a way to travel across vast distances and stuff. And so really Moraine has decided, based upon what she's heard from the Aiel and what she's heard from the Tinkers and Loyal, whatever, this man who she's realizing we need to go warn the Green Man at the Eye of the World, I love how Robert Jordan just throws this in there, and then all of the characters go, who's that? What's this? What's this new thing? Like the ways are also this what are these things called? And so you as a reader are kind of like,
I'm not. I guess I got to keep going.
yeah. Like this sounds cool, So they kind of talk more about just the gift of the ways and how this was given to them by basically Loyal tells them that during the time of madness that men who were seeking shelter from the power, right? From the one power, they were going mad, and they would enter a steading. And while there, since the Ogier would protect them and let them live out their life, it was almost as if they did less destruction. Like they could wait till the end of their life, and when they felt the calling again, they would go into the world, and the madness would strike, and they would be killed, or something would happen to. This is back way long time ago during the madness, after the boar and Lews Therin and the 100 companions had struck at the Dark One, but he had struck back his counterstroke, sending men who could channel into. He had tainted their source, and had driven them mad. Well, they find refuge in these steadings, and they help them create the way gates. And the ways were placed outside of the Ogier-built cities. And during the War of the 100 Years, however, the ways started to get corrupted. They grew dark. People were disappearing, or they came out mad. The elders concluded that it was no longer safe to travel the ways, and they forbid its use. So can't be done. But Moiraine knows all of this and still wants to travel there. So yeah, it's definitely a dangerous place, and something that they have to kind of, she thinks they have to use. Loyal saying, no, we can't. But she knows he could guide them through the ways. So they could go themselves, but Loyal has agreed to go with these ta'veren, and she thinks that, we need him to help guide us through. He could read some of the markings or the signs in the ways. So we learn more about them later, and you'll get more, especially in the second book, about what you can do with them, where they go to. They're connected. These gates, so you have a way gate that's connected. You go into the ways, and there are many paths. You go across a bridge here. You come across one bridge, and then you get to a place where you can either go right, left, or forward, and each of those will take you to a different city. You could be traveling, again, for just a couple of days, and you could travel across the continent. So does that make some sense?
Yeah. It's kind of gates, right? But it's almost like I don't know, hyperspace lanes, right? And when you think about Star Wars, like those hyperspace lanes. Like you can't just jump wherever you want. Like there's specific lanes you can take.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And so there's a wind, there's a dark shadow in the ways that they talk about one of the Ogier who came out and who he had gone mad, and he seemed all but his mind was gone, and he was attacked, and it's that scares Loyal. He doesn't want to come across this darkness. Now there's a risk. It's not like you go in there and it's an automatic given that you're going to be attacked. You could make it, but fewer and fewer people were getting to their destination unharmed, unmolested, So it's sort of like, not safe to travel. But so they end up, I don't know exactly where it is in the chapter, but they end up convincing him to kind of, go along with this, and that this is the only way. They needed haste. They had to get to Valdara, and then from there into the Blight to find,
and Nynaeve, asked Moiraine, why do we want to go on this way? It's a dangerous path to take, from what they're, what they're describing. And she says we've run out of options, pretty much. I mean, if we give up, we're handing the world over to the Dark One. Staying in Caemlyn means pretty much certain death, and if we leave, we gotta get out of here. So they all kind of reluctantly agree to try the ways, because it seems like the only other option.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And Moiraine does sort of give, she tells sort of the boys that they must go. Nynaeve and Egwene have a choice, but they may not be ta'veren, but they are strong, very powerful, and she's known since Baerlon. So, yeah. And she said, no doubt, the Fades also know, and Balsamon. So, it would, I think she kind of believes they all should stay together, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, not Nynaeve and Egwene are not going to stay behind at all, right? It's not
right.
Gonna...
Yeah. So then, in chapter 43, really what ends up happening. So they decide they're gonna go in the ways, and then they're just kind of planning out the rest of their trip. and then they all go to bed, right, to get ready for this, and then that's when Rand falls asleep and he knows he's in another dream. He sees Balsamon again, and he sees 3 figures.
Yes.
A wolf, a dagger, and a sword. And so one with a wolf at his feet, one with a dagger, and one with a sword. Then you got Balsamon there, trying to tempt him to kneel to him by offering him the power beyond imagination, and threatens him with eternal pain if he refuses. Balsamon tells him that this battle is a battle as old as time itself, and he has no chance of winning it. So then he kind of remembers Moraine's advice, and Rand tries to deny him. Balsamon is not impressed and continues pressing Rand. Panicking, Rand destroys the little figures and feels something stab at his hand as he does, and Rand desperately tries to wake up, and when he does, he notices that Matt wakes up at the exact same time. Then they kind of tell each other that they had the same dream, and Rand starts to look at his hand, right, and he notices that he has there's like a splinter in it, and as soon as he removes it that's when Moraine comes in, and she's like, "It's time to go."
It's time to go. Yeah,
we gotta go. Yeah,
let's go. Well, and what's interesting too, so a couple connections to these batch of chapters. Back when they were in the garden and they were walking through, the presence of the shadow and the effect that it's had on the crops and the weather and stuff. Rand notices that the garden is green and it's lush and things are blooming and growing. And Elaine says to him that it's Elida Sedai, who it's her presence that has caused that. Well, Moraine says that basically, just like Lan can kind of sense shadow spawn, she can ward them off essentially, and that being near her can help shield them from these dreams. Normal people, I would say, but they're still being affected by these dreams, and so then denying him is important. But one thing it's interesting that Balsamon does here is he mentions the Black Aja in that dream. He talks about how he has a grip on the Aes Sedai, and that the Aes Sedai only are, that Rand will just be a puppet for them, and that this has happened time and time again, and so he's really even planting the seed of doubt in those who you are trusting. You're trusting these Aes Sedai. Look what they did to Logain. Look what they're going to do to these other people who came before him. You're just one of them. But to me, join me, and together we can rule the continent.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, but yeah, this battle's old as time, and as you said, it's time to go, time to get out of there. So the last chapter we really have here is that before sunrise, they're leaving. They have to talk to Master Gil, and they're headed out. And he's basically saying, you're going to look suspicious. Look, the White Cloaks are out there. They oppose the Queen. They're still watching the Queen's blessing. And, there's a back and forth as they're gathering their stuff between Matt and Perrin and Rand about the differences that they're all experiencing. Just the Perrin's eyes and how he can see in the dark now. And it's like, wait, what? Loyal can sense the Waygate, and he's the one who's going to guide them through Caemlyn, essentially. So just before sunrise, they arrive at a building under which Loyal says the Waygate is. Using the one power, Moraine breaks into the cellar. They find the Waygate. Loyal is visibly upset by what happened to the grove that used to be there. And remember, earlier he was talking about just how they've torn the groves down, they've built over top of them, they've disrespected these old ancient groves, and that Tarvalin was about the only place that really kept them up. So Moraine picks off a leaf, a very particular leaf, and moves it around and opens the Waygate, and the company then enter. This is all sort of a bit, it's dark. It's like the, as they're coming through, it's sort of this sheen, this glimmering, sort of, it's translucent, but yet it's weird, the way it's described. Like as they come through, they can look back and they can see each other. Time was different, speed and different things were different. You didn't want to rush into a Waygate. You wanted to enter it slowly. And it made you think that every step you took inside of a Waygate was magnified. right? To an extreme degree, or like how fast you moved and everything is just different. So they're like cautiously going into this way gate. And then Loyal leads them across several bridges. He realizes that some of these bridges are damaged and they have to take a different way. So it's really interesting. Like that part, I feel like that's where it kind of slows down a little bit. It's creepy. It's weird. They're looking for this shadow darkness, this wind, this Machin Shin like wind that's going to come and maybe attack them or whatever. And Loyal keeps warning them about it and stuff, but he's reading and guiding them to each little island. So they'll cross a bridge, land on this island, and they would look up and down and around, and it just seemed like there was nothing. Like they were outside, they were in a void, but yet there was these ways were crafted into them. It's very hard to describe, and I can't wait to see how the show sort of does this and illustrates it. It's going to be really interesting. But
yeah, I have a feeling that'll all be like one episode. Like, you know what I mean? Like I can see how they can lump, like, you know, there's a couple of these in this segment. I can almost see, I can see how they can lump this into one episode. I can see how they can lump this into one episode. Yeah.
So really at the end of this, they've got their horses in there. There's a silence that was broken by a startling grunt from Loyal. Rand stood in his stirrups to peer past the Ogier and swallowed hard at what he saw. They were in the middle of a bridge, but only a few feet ahead of Loyal, the bridge ended in a jagged gap. And so we're stuck. We're kind of at a point where we have to turn back, and he has to decide what to do. Which way do we go? Everything was going well, and they were unharassed, but yet, what do we do? So that's sort of where we leave them. And I think next time we're going to finish this out, my friend.
Next time we're finishing the book, man. It's crazy. Yeah, next time we will be doing, so that was chapter 44. So next time we will be doing chapters 45 to 53.
Yeah. Crazy. Yeah, so and we're going to talk in the extended edition, but I mean, pretty cool, right? This is pretty cool stuff.
Absolutely. This was a great segment because so much stuff happened. Like where we're at now. Again, when I was saying earlier, I was like thinking about where when we get to the end, right? We're going through the way gates, and it's like, okay, now we're in this total different thing. It's like crazy to think that we like just got to Caemlyn. You know what I mean? Like last time we were like, right. Caemlyn. We've been trying to get to Caemlyn for so much, and now it's like Caemlyn. Yeah, forget that. All right, now we're on to
something else. Yeah,
now we're on to something way bigger. Yeah, I mean, so it is getting real in here, and we're gonna finish the book next time. So that's definitely crazy. So
it's cool. Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess we're on to my predictions. How does this book end? Well, fortunately, I do have the foresight of knowing that there's 13 or 14 more books to come.
Yeah.
So I do. So it's not like they all die or something. I honestly I don't really know. I don't. It's because it's so like we're in this way gate. I mean, obviously we're gonna get through the way gate. Where does that take us? Does it we may not even get to Tar Valon.
Okay.
We may not. We may not. I mean, I think there's going to be there's probably going to be a battle of some sorts. I don't think that it's going to be like some huge epic show. It's not like we're not like fighting Balsamon or anything.
Yeah.
I mean,
okay.
Okay. It's, you know what I mean? I mean, it's not like oh, this is the end because just
the dark one's coming here at the first book. Yeah.
No. But will we fight some sort of lower level? It's like in the first Harry Potter book, like he doesn't fight Voldemort, right? I mean, fight like an aspect of him, but it could be something similar to that, yeah.
Have you been impressed by because this last section I think will really show it to you in that okay, we go to this place Caemlyn where we think we're gonna be blown away. We're introduced to the queen, her daughter, his her brother, her half brother, another Aes Sedai, Loyal.
I mean, every time, man, that is definitely something interesting about Robert Jordan's writing style. Is you think, you just get to the city, okay, it's a cool city, we'll meet some interesting people. No, you meet like the head honchos of these places, and every time you meet somebody, it's not just. It seems like they're big deals, like every time.
Everything's a big deal. Yeah, everything's a big deal, and it's crazy. And then like as you say, we're just gonna. He has he very much will just shove you sort of into the situation where like you feel like Rand. You're like as they were learning about the ways, so were we. His characters, so we're growing with them, and that it's such a cool way to do it. You can hear them sort of ask the questions, what is that? What is this? Why should we go? This Ogier is saying we shouldn't go. Moraine saying we should. We don't know what this thing is. This is all legend turned, into real life now. And so it's very interesting how much he trusts the readers just to accept this. And yes, this is the way it is. Like these Ogier did this and they did that and moving on. And I can see it anyways. Like the little kind of, he's weaving in future groups of people with like the reference to the seafaring people in that book that Tam wanted to read, and then he referenced the Aiel. He's referenced Kyrian and Tyr and Ilion and these different places. And when Tom Maryland was telling stories about the hunt for the Horn, the Great Hunt, and the Horn of Valir and the heroes of the Horn, he would tell about them. Like it's in all of that, those are little tiny nods that he's making to this world is huge. Yeah. And there is much to it, and get ready. So, yeah, it's just cool. Really cool.
Yeah, so.
Okay.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, guys, I hope you guys come back next week, or not next week, but on the 15th, as we're gonna finish this. Be sure to check us out over on Twitter at the Horn of Valir. You can send us any messages there. We do have a Facebook page. And real quick plug here, as we're just kind of plug in our social medias. If you want to follow me on social media, you can do that at Super Gainsbros on Instagram and Twitter. You can follow Ez at Womprat_2M. Little Star Wars reference there. Because we are constantly tweeting about all this kind of stuff, and we've started doing some live hangouts. We did one over on our Bend the Knee Facebook group. I do kind of do live hangouts Thursdays on Twitch. I have a link on my Twitter for that, and you guys can certainly come. I mean, Ez is usually in there too, and we're just playing some games. But you guys can come on over and ask us anything about Wheel of Time, Game of Thrones, whatever. Anything. You want. You can. We're glad to talk Wheel of Time. Please no spoilers. But I mean, maybe I can just focus on the game, and Ez can handle some of the Twitch chat.
We had a great hangout this past Thursday, and I think we're going to move that to maybe Tuesdays and Wednesdays, where we kind of do just a nice, fun Facebook hangout, and we'll move it around to different groups. But for now, it's been in our Bend the Knee Game of Thrones group, and a lot of people actually listen to that podcast as well, and they read that series, and they ask us questions about Wheel of Time anyway. So if you're one of those people, thank you, and if you're interested in that, then definitely come on over and do that. We've got a lot going on there, and we've upgraded our YouTube over there as well, so you can go check us out. We do like those hangouts are us on video in our little kind of air quote studios, I guess, if you will. And it's fun.
We could actually, that would be a decent place for us to do it here. We do have a YouTube channel for Heroes of the Horn. We have not incorporated full video on that yet. It will be coming at some point down the line, but we could just do hangouts. Yeah, we could do a YouTube live hangout, I believe. So that'd be cool. Yeah, just got to do some setup and stuff like that. But yeah, so that's certainly something that could be coming down. But right now, the best way to hit us up is through Patreon, patreon.com/the Horn of Valir, which is where we're about to go record an extended edition where we're going to go back, talk a little bit about the rescue, and probably some stuff about Taviran. There's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot. There's still a lot more discussion to have about this segment. But as I'm looking at my timer, we're at about 2 hours and 10 minutes. These episodes just get longer and longer. It's great.
I know. It is great, actually. It's great. It's fun, and it's just a lot to cover, and it's cool to kind of nerd out over them. So, but yeah, thanks everybody for all the support. And again, we are blown away by the support over there on Patreon. We got some stuff coming out in March for folks who have been supporting us. So, first 2 months getting this thing going, we've been blown away by the support there. Shout out to a few people. Nicole Sadai of the White Aja just recently joined, and then our Taviran this episode, Lady Stephanie, this episode was sponsored by her, and she actually sent us a message just saying that she wanted to say that so far she's really enjoyed the podcast. Currently on her who knows how many times reread of the series, and the first time through perspective is interesting, and I will do my best to never be a dark friend and to always pull the pattern in a positive direction.
Awesome.
Can't wait for the next installment. Until then, may peace favor your sword.
Yeah, guys. So, all right. Well, we want to thank you for answering the call. In our next episode, we will be discussing the Eye of the World chapters 45 through 53, which is to the end of the book. And in our extended edition on Patreon, we're going to be covering some more of that, the rescue, Egwene, Perrin, and Perrin's eyes, and a lot about wolves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. If you like our podcast, don't forget to subscribe, like us, write a review, leave a comment, or send us a message at thehornofvalir@gmail.com.
We will see you on March 15th. And remember, the grave is no bar to our call.